All right, what is up, everybody? Let me get a pen here really fast. Okay, so I have to shoot this right now because I just was talking with one of our sales crews, and a couple of thoughts that I've been having in my study lately had just really started to solidify for me as I was teaching and training the sales crew on some of the inner game and core values related things for our sales program. And as I was talking to them, and we're training, a lot of people to become managers right now, and it really just, I don't know even how to express it except for to tell you what I was thinking, and it just dawned on me some really key principles that I think are the ultimate key to happiness and to success, whatever you define that as, but ultimate fulfillment beyond just the success of monetary or materialistic things. Anyway, so let me explain this to you. As I've been going through the straight line sales certification again by Jordan Belfort, one of the things that he said today while I was studying it, while I was watching it, just hit home with me so hard. He said, it was very subtle, but it are you ever working on a problem to where you're trying to fix like a problem either in your life or at work, and there's like different elements of the problem that are like, you don't really understand why the problem is there, but you're trying to fix it and you're working on it, and it's like a struggle, and then all of a sudden something clicks and you're like, oh, I know exactly why this is going wrong, and then you go fix it and it's like, oh yeah, that's awesome, that's amazing. So that's kind of how it's been with me lately, where I've had these thoughts and ideas in my head that weren't quite connecting all the way. And today, with one of the things that Jordan said, coupled with a lot of our leadership training and teaching, it just all kind of came to a head for me. A lot of things that I already thought I knew, but they just really started to make a lot more sense. Let me explain. So that's very generic. Let me explain. What he said was, any good sales training, and specifically he's referring to his training, the straight line, it follows all of the rules of human influence. So think about that. Any good sales training, and he was referring to the straight line, follows the rules of human influence. And I started to think in my mind, okay, what is the outcome? Like when you're selling someone, when I'm cold calling someone at a doorstep and I'm going and knocking doors and trying to sell people, what's the outcome I'm trying to achieve? Okay, so if my outcome is I want to close X amount of customers, and that's the outcome I'm trying to achieve, then basically what I have to do is say, okay, if this is my outcome, what's the formula or the equation that leads to this outcome every single time, okay? And what are the rules that I need to harness and understand? So first I need to know them, then I need to understand them, then I need to have a skill set that allows me to follow them productively. And Jordan also a lot refers to his sales training as goal-oriented communication, which I love because you're communicating with a goal in mind, right? And oftentimes that goal is to influence someone to buy something from you. But at a very deep level, that goal for us, and obviously for him too, is to deliver value that will actually improve somebody's life, okay? So if that's my goal, then all I have to do is say, what are if I want to close this many amount of customers, that number, whether it's 10 or 5 or whatever in a day, then I need to say, what's the equation, the formula that will get me to this goal? And I have to obey that formula in order to make it happen. So there's always X amount of doors that I need to knock. Plus there's always, Y amount of things that I need to say in a very specific way. There's certain tonalities and paraverbals in my language that I need to follow in order to influence them. And then not only that, I need to make sure that I am honest in very specific ways in order for them to stay customers so that they actually end up paying me and enjoying their relationship with me as the person providing a service for their home or their family or whatever. And all of that, once I do that well, once I line up all these variables of the equation, that equals the outcome, which is, close X amount of customers and make them happy, and then I can increase my paycheck or whatever. So the thought was, though, all of these variables, they're important. Some of them have to do with, I said, if I want to, close X amount of customers, then or this number of customers, I need to do X, which is how many doors I need to knock. So a lot of this has to do with hard work, right? Just talking to more people is a variable in this equation that I can control, okay? If this one is I need to say certain things, then I need to follow a certain script. So I need to have this strategy of a script. And then this one, I need to have a certain skill set that would allow me to speak in a way where someone trusts me and that I'm competent, I'm an expert in my field, that I know what I'm talking about, that I'm a professional, right? Even if I'm not, I need to be able to speak that way to be able to influence someone. So when I was thinking about this, what said really hit me was like, and I'm going to bring this to a deeper point. You might be thinking like, this was profound to you? This doesn't seem that profound. It's not yet, just wait. So when he said, you have to follow, like my system follows the rules of human influence. It's just like, oh, like that is actually a really critical and amazing point for just attainment in general, right? In this scenario, or at least in the scenario of the straight line training that I'm studying right now, it's the rules of human influence are built for a very specific outcome, which is to deliver value to people and to close them on your idea, good, or service and get them to buy from you, right? But then my mind went to this, like, what if the outcome that I want is to like actually live a happy and fulfilling life? What if that's my outcome? So if I want like the outcome of happiness, right? What if that's my outcome? Well, if that's my outcome, so this is where this like principle started to really cascade into a deeper, underlying, more meaningful thing, which is just like there are rules to follow to influence people, universal rules that do not change. So what Jordan was saying is like, look, I didn't invent influence. I didn't invent persuasion. All I did was I harnessed and followed all of the rules in a very systematic, operationalized, formulaic, step-by-step process that when followed every time, you will, in his words, close everyone that's closable. And I've 100% seen that for myself. I like following a lot of the principles that we tweaked and applied specifically to my situation. We had test groups that like doubled and tripled their personal bests ever using this system. Because that's why you're basically like, at a very fundamental level, you're not changing what those rules of persuasion and influence are. You're just harnessing them in order to achieve the outcome that you want. And so that's why this hit me so hard, is because I thought like, oh, that is very fascinating. The idea that there is a rule or set of rules or laws that govern all of the outcomes that we want in life. So like, just as real as gravity is the thing that governs the way that I interact with my physical world and even time itself, right? Like we can go watch Interstellar and the actual principles of like how gravity distorts and affects time and things like that. So like if that's a principle that governs how I interact with the world, just as real as that physical principle governs and in a lot of ways limits me, but in even more significant ways allows me to enables me to have freedoms that I otherwise would not have. If I don't understand the laws of gravity and I go try to jump off a cliff because I think that that's going to be fun, I'm going to die every single time. But if I understand the law of gravity and I want to go have a thrilling experience where I jump off a cliff and then can navigate like through a certain like system, like airplane, parachute, whatever, to have an experience that's really meaningful, if I can follow the laws that exist in nature, it will allow me to have much more freedom than I ever would have had without understanding and harnessing those laws, right? So what's very interesting is like those laws exist everywhere. They govern every outcome that we could possibly want. So for example, to bring this back to what Jordan said, Jordan Belfort is the leading expert on being able to harness and gather the laws of human influence, harness them together in a very strategic, systemized format that allows you to get an output that you desire in a business setting or in a communication setting, in a family setting, in an attainment setting, right? So too exist laws that govern all of the other outcomes that we could possibly desire. So for example, I wrote here, happiness. What that also means is that like there are laws that govern happiness, fulfillment, trust, right? By law, I cannot go tell my wife that I'm going to be home at 6 p.m. for 10 days in a row and promise her that I'm going to be home at 6 p.m. By law, if I am not home at 6 p.m. every day and every day I'm late and I have an excuse, by law, I have violated her trust and therefore she will not trust me more in the future, right? Relationships are built on laws as well. They're laws that go beyond like what anyone desires to be true or not. It is like they're true always, all of the time. They're principles, right? So in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey talks about living a principle-centered life. And what he says is like, ultimately you are setting yourself up for failure if you live anything but a principle-centered life. So what does that actually mean? Like there's different types of centers you can have. The center meaning like the thing that you follow and that you worship or that you incorporate as the ultimate grand meaning to your life, the thing that like you depend on most. So for example, if I have a spouse-centered life, then my happiness is constantly dependent on how my spouse is feeling, right? If she's happy, I'm happy. If she's sad, I'm sad. If she's in like a tough spot in her life where she's trying to figure out like what she wants to do as a career, I'm also in a tough spot in my life figuring out what she wants to do as a career because she's my center. She's the only thing that like matters to me, right? Now, you might be thinking like, what's so bad about having a spouse-centered life? That's better than having a drug-centered life, or that's better than having like a pornography-centered life, or whatever else the things that could be bad, right? Yes, maybe true, right? But ultimately, if my life is spouse-centered, then I am basically dependent on how she feels, which is ever changing. If I have like a dog-centered life, for example, and my whole life revolves around like Zella, who's my dog, who I love, then in 10 years or 15 years when she's gone, then like my life's in shambles, right? And it might be sad no matter what, but like I'm saying, you get my point here. That I'm like I'm exaggerating the obvious, I think, but there's also other centers that are very dangerous. So for example, if I have a money center and everything that I do revolves around money, and all I'm seeking to do is harness the principles that govern the results of money, then that also could be dangerous, right? Because I might end up doing things that would be counterproductive to my happiness, my relationships, my real goals for like fulfillment and attainment and trust in my life. And I might violate those principles in order to harness the principles that would only bring about like money. So depending on what my center is, that will determine my level of fulfillment and happiness and stability in my life. If I have, Stephen Covey ultimately drives home the point by saying, the only way to actually have a life that you are fulfilled with, that actually like gives you real meaning and purpose that everyone longs for. Like we all long for a purpose. Very few people actually have one. Another thing that I like that Jordan Belfort says, every human longs for a vision or is thirsty for a vision. Very few actually have one. And really like there is a deep underlying thing about being a human being that makes it so that we long for something beyond ourselves. A purpose beyond just like self-interest. Yes, self-interest is a big part of it, but like that's at the base level. The thing that actually really brings us to be human is like our ability for kindness and for being able to look outside of ourselves and not act always in a self-interested way. It's the ability to choose to not be self-interested. And the way that you end up doing that is by developing a center based on principles. So, and there's a lot, I think you could do an entire like lecture series on what it means to be principle-centered. But to bring home my point, ultimately being principle-centered is what actually allows you to harness the very rules of nature or of the universe or whatever you want to call it, the very principles that would bring about happiness and fulfillment. So I think kind of what dawned on me in this training when Jordan said, like, I'm following the rules of human influence, basically, with my training platform. Where my mind went was, oh, that's very interesting because there must be and are always rules and laws that govern every desired outcome that we want. And there are also rules and laws that govern the outcomes that we don't want. And when we follow those, even if we don't want to, we end up getting them, right? Like, there are rules and laws that govern poverty. And if I follow those rules and laws, whether I want to or not, I'm always going to be in poverty. There are rules and laws that govern riches. If I follow those rules and laws all the time, and if I just understand them and follow them perfectly, I will always gain riches every single time. It's just a matter of choosing that. If I want to have a really, really crappy marriage, there are rules and laws that will make it. So if I plug in all of the points of the equation, all the variables, the outcome after the equal sign will equal terrible marriage, divorce, failure, hate you, all of that stuff, right? In contrast, though, there are rules and laws that allow me to say, what do I really want in my life? And for me, it's like, I want to have an amazing family. I want to feel fulfilled in my marriage. And not just in like a sexual desire, pleasurable way. Like, obviously that is a part of the overarching encompassing fact that, like, I want to have a marriage that is fulfilled and lasting and really meaningful, that there's like a true, genuine sense of love there. And so if that's what I desire, all I have to do is understand what the principles that govern that outcome are and follow them, right? There are rules and laws that govern like my ability to obtain wealth so that I can be an influence for good for others in my life. All I have to do is find and discover, know, and apply the principles that would bring about that outcome. And 100% of the time, I will find it, right? And then again, so like those are the things that I desire, like a really good family, really good marriage. I want to be like a servant to the people that work with and for me. Not a master, but rather like a servant, and the fulfillment that comes from that, and like helping others and seeing others and change their lives in very significant, profound ways. Like, I want that. And so if I say those are the things that I want, those are the outcomes that I want, then at the end of the day, the thing that will determine whether or not I get those is my ability to seek and understand those laws and the principles that govern them, and then follow them to their conclusion, and always they will equal. The thing after the equal sign, once I follow the variables that get what I want, will be the thing that I want. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Nobody's responding because I'm the only one talking to myself. So the last point that I had here, which is interesting, because I kind of want to drive this home with just a couple more thoughts. One is, when I lived in Argentina, for a couple of years, and there was a president of our organization when I was there. I was a 19 to 21-year-old kid in Argentina, living with either in a house or just by myself with another 19 to 20-year-old kid, where we were doing the same thing. We were going around and we were basically preaching to people about the beliefs of my religion. And so that was like, the whole organization was structured to accomplish that task, right? And I had a very wise leader who was the president of this organization, and one of the things that he would say, his name was Alfredo Salas, and he's the most, apart from my dad and my current boss, he was the most influential person ever in my life right now, in terms of like a mentor and someone who really just shaped my beliefs, right? But we were doing this one training with him one time, and he said, I'm just going to say it in Spanish. He said, no importa a dónde vas, si no sabes a dónde quieres ir, cualquier colectivo te lleva bien. So it doesn't matter where you're going. That's basically the first part. If you don't know where you want to go, any bus will take you there. Okay? It's like so interesting. It's like Alice in Wonderland, right? Like, if you don't know which road, if you don't know where you want to go, any road will do, right? But it's going to take you somewhere, that's for sure. So the point of that is, like, if that's true, if you don't know where you want to go, just hop on any bus. It'll take you exactly where you want to go, right? If you do know where you want to go, find the right path and follow it. And if you get on the bus, because he used this analogy, because in Argentina you go down to Central Cordoba, and basically it's like this really. I grew up in the United States, obviously, and so I had no idea like what this world was like. It's just like taxis running everywhere, crazy. They're all like the craziest drivers ever, but they're actually really good at driving somehow. I don't understand it. When they would go through intersections, there's no stop lights in the middle of the city in intersections, and so it's all one-way streets, and you can't see around corners. And so we would get in these taxis, and their standard operating procedure to not die as they're speeding through like 70, 80 miles an hour in these back street alleyways is you just honk about 5 feet before you got through the intersection, and that would let the next guy know on the other side coming the other way to stop abruptly. I'm not even talking like slow stop. I mean like step on the brakes like hard, come to a quick stop so that you don't run each other over. It's insane. I remember being so freaked out when that happened. Anyway, so when you're in the middle of the city, there's just buses everywhere. There's like taxis and buses, and that's it. And so it's really hard to know where to go, because it's like all of the buses culminate at that point. What's really interesting for me, I work with a lot of young people who are salespeople, and what I find is that like it's like this gathering point of where everyone's trying to figure out who they want to be in life. Just like we would go gather in the middle of the city where all of the buses were before we found out or decided where we wanted to go, 100 miles away, 200 miles away in every single direction you could think of, right? And I get to work with a lot of people who are like at the point of deciding who they want to be, whether money's going to be their focus and their God and their idol, or whether becoming the best version of themselves is going to be ultimately king for them. And they're just deciding, who do I want to be so that I can go step on the right bus and that it'll take me there. And maybe it's a series of buses. But the point being, like, if you step on the wrong bus and it's not taking you where you want to go, you'll quickly realize that and be able to get off. Oftentimes, there was a couple times where, like, it would be really late at night and dangerous, and we'd be in the middle of the city, and we'd have to go catch a bus back to our pension, our apartment. And we'd get on a bus thinking that it was the right one, but it would start going the opposite direction and be like, crap, we got to get off the bus again. So you'd get off and you go back to the starting point and catch the right one, right? And that oftentimes happens. But the point is that cannot happen unless you understand, where do you want to go? What's the thing that you want? Because the truth of the matter is, like, you can actually decide whatever you want and make that your ultimate goal, because there's always a way to get there. You just have to find the natural laws and principles and then follow them to their conclusion that is the outcome that you desire. So the real question is like, it's not if you can achieve what you want. The real question is, make sure that you want the right things. Because if you end up getting the wrong things that bring about like a lot of money or success, however you define that, but along the way, you don't follow the principles that bring about happiness and fulfillment and joy, you'll end up searching for this thing that's money, and what you'll find is you'll get it because if that's what you want, you're going to find the principles to go get it, right? And then along the way, you'll leave a path of destruction in your wake. Luckily, there's a way for like redemption and out of those things. But my point being was like, one, whatever you want, you can get it. All you have to do is apply the natural principles that bring about the outcome. And two, be careful what you want, because you will get it at the end of the day. Whether you realize that or not. And maybe you could do a whole video on how like we oftentimes even get the things that we say we don't want because we truly actually want them. So I wanted to just leave that with that point that ultimately it's about deciding what you want and then making that outcome the thing that is most important to you. Make sure that you want the right things, the things that bring about happiness, fulfillment, and joy. And be careful of what you want, because anything that you say you want, there are governing laws and principles that allow you to go achieve that thing. And at the end of the day, it's just a matter of choosing so that you can find those laws and principles, get to know them, understand them, apply them in a way that's like a testing methodical type of way, and to get the outcomes that you want. So I'm going to do another video here another time about like what some of those core principles actually are to bring about like what the things I feel like human beings should actually be wanting, especially if you're in like a business or sales setting, that would bring about the ultimate happiness of your life. And then from there, we'll really talk about like those principles and how to align them properly so that they're the foundation